Hello, everyone, and welcome to Ramblemancy. It's been a couple weeks, and we are back. We are back, joined by our guest host, Kate O'Sullivan. Kate, welcome back, and thanks for coming.
Hello, friends. Thanks for having me back. This weird Australian from the other side of the world in a time zone that is not the same.
Listen, we've navigated time zones before.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
It's
absolutely.
fine. It works. It works. Um,
It actually works really well because it's a reasonably okay hour of the morning
I
for
feel
me and a
like
reasonably okay hour of the evening for
the
you.
thing is, I figured it would be when I
Mhm.
first asked you because, like, you're usually in our chat anyway during this time. So I was like, hey, well,
Yeah.
Kate's obviously around. So, like, but,
Yes,
yeah,
how to get yourself invited to be on things. Just be around
just
at the
be
right
around.
time.
Yeah. No,
I
Timely.
mean,
it's funny how true that is, though.
It
Like,
is.
mm,
It's
it really
true.
does end up being that way.
yeah.
But yeah, just
Yeah.
before we get started, just sort of a few quick announcements up at the top here. First and foremost, as we've mentioned before, John has begun con season 2024 and is off traveling the globe, by which I mean just sort of like the same few
Dun
states
dun
in the United
dun.
States. And so
Yeah.
technically what I said is true. It's just like
Hmm.
misleading. Anyway, so
Traveling some small portion of the globe that
there we
is
go.
exclusive to a particular non-passport requiring space. Yeah, yeah,
Exactly,
that
exactly.
counts.
So John will be off and will potentially pop in at random moments if certain weekends just become, available. But for the time being, for the immediate future, we will be having we'll be having Kate here. Sorry, I just got distracted by Matt showing up in the chat. Um,
Ah, that's fair.
did John
Yeah,
touch the
yeah,
SCP gender swap
yep.
stone? Yep.
Uh, we have just this is how it works now. No, we can never be seen in the same room ever again.
Exactly. Yeah. Other announcements are as far as Rule of Lore scheduling and programming. As we all know historically here on this channel, the summer is a notoriously difficult time to schedule around for all of us. This one is no different. So this for the second half of July, we won't be doing any kind of programming as it would just be me and maybe Kate. But yeah, it is. So Freeman will be also traveling the globe. A small section of non-passport requiring travel of the globe.
I'm
Yeah,
going. I'll be laterally.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we figure it's a good opportunity to just sort of give ourselves a bit of a break. But of course, during that time, we will be pausing for Patreons. We will be pausing Patreon billing and things like that, so you don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. Since we will not be producing any kind of content during the month of July. You know what? It might have just been better if I'd said because it's my birthday month. That might have just been
yeah.
a better
I thought
explanation.
you were claiming your birthday month. You did
I
like
I no, I
that's how that
explicitly
works.
said that I wasn't one of those people who claims their whole birthday month.
Mhm.
Is
And
I
You did
believe
here
say
we
my
are
exact
hearing you
words.
doing it now.
Yep. Now that you've done it twice, now Pixel Chat's picked it up. Now it's a total
Twice.
of four
Yeah.
times.
I just keep being I keep being checked by this captioner, man. Like
This captioner is out for blood. I tell you,
Yeah.
it might kick me off in
Yeah.
a second.
yeah. Well, it's known to do that for no reason at all. So anyway, that's those sort of our major announcements for the time being. But yeah, thanks so much for joining us tonight. We will be talking about TTRPG beginnings, since it is sort of Kate, I didn't actually give you the background as to how Freeman and I arrived on this topic, which
No, it's
was
fine.
that we were looking back on seeing as how it was going to be the beginning of like your time with us. We're like, would be cool to bring back like what was our first Ramblemancy topic ever, and our first Ramblemancy topic was TTRPGs. So we figured we'd combine those things and just go with
Yeah.
TTRPG beginnings in terms of both in terms of like how we all got started in TTRPGs, but also in terms of like our favorite ways that we've either started a campaign that we played in or a session or something like that, or ones that we've just hypothesized about that we thought would be really cool,
Yeah.
So like that's today's all about beginnings. That's the theme for today's
Love that.
Ramblemancy.
Love it.
So Freeman and I think have talked a few times about how we got started in TTRPGs, but I'm not sure if we asked you about this, Kate. So
Not really.
um, yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead and
So
get us started if you want.
I live in a bit of a weird bucket when it comes to TTRPGs because I didn't TTRPG. I mean, I guess technically I'm a COVID TTRPG person, but I'm not because it technically was just before COVID lockdowns and chaos and things that I fully got into TTRPGs themselves. However, I've been an improviser for a long time before that. So I've done like non-dice related,
Right.
non-randomized storytelling of that nature for a long time before that, including some vaguely TTRPG inspired improv games and sessions and things as well. But I started playing because a friend of mine went, "Hey, I want to do this really nerdy thing, and do a TTRPG actual play that is based around being sciencey academics at a university, which is Dungeons and Doctorates, which is one of the things I still work on." And so I was like, "Crap, I need to learn really fast how this all works," and so I did. I learned really, really quickly. But I had also been surrounded by it with friends at back when I was at university and things like that who had played or were well into the hobby. I just was never crossed the streams at the time.
Right.
So yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm an annoying COVID like lockdown TTRPG human. Unfortunately for me, that will be my
So
beginnings, I guess technically.
so what was your, do you remember, like, what was your first experience with it like? Like, do you remember much about it? Like how,
Yeah. So mine was a bit weird because I have a beautiful friend. His name is Joel, who decided at the start of lockdown. So before I'd ever recorded for Dungeons and Doctorates, it was about 4 or 5 months beforehand. We were still planning everything, doing character building, all of that. And my friend Joel was like, I actually want to train a bunch of people to be dungeon masters because there aren't enough who can. And right now, it's lockdown. I don't have the time to do all of this for everyone. I want some people who can do some one shots, things like that. And he deliberately focused on getting a bunch of women to do it. So myself and a couple of friends were like, we'll learn the rules and how this all works and come and do it. So my first experience was functionally learning to GM with
okay.
someone who ran through it was like a basic module one shot. I've got it somewhere. I don't. It was, you go up to the tavern and they've got problems in the cellar and you've got to go solve it. And there's a bit of a puzzle and a bit of a this and a bit of that. It's a very classic. And he built our characters for us, and I was like, "Nah, never doing that again. No more pre-made characters. Build your own." But other than that, I think it was quite good because we did it as a quite broken down. Here's how it all works system, which I think is great, especially for those who are new to the hobby, to have someone who's like, "Here's I'm going to hold your hand. We're going to get through this. It's okay.
Yeah.
You can ask all the dumb questions. Don't worry about it." Which is, I think, vastly different to how a lot of people experience TTRPGs, where they're kind of thrown into it and a bit like, "Oh God, how do I even what dice is this?" Holds
Right.
up giant d20, but yeah,
Yeah. No, that's cool. That's interesting to me that, so that your beginning in TTRPG really was sort of beginning in like GMing. Really, that's really cool. That's kind of
yeah.
like really
With
just being thrown into the deep end, kind of on like.
Yeah, I think the benefit is that Joel knew that myself and a couple of the other people who were on that call and doing that with him were improvisers and performers. So we knew how to do storytelling. It's just we didn't know how to do it in the context of a game like that.
Sure.
And we were like, okay, so a lot of the skills that we needed to get were rules based and ways of thinking based. So that idea of I'm a firm believer in have pieces you can move around. Don't necessarily expect your players to do what they ask you. You ask them to
Yeah.
do because they won't.
Yeah.
We didn't. To him in this like, and we were supposed to be being helpful. Like that idea of being able to have that movement and movability, I think has helped me as a player long term as well. Because I don't think in terms
Yeah.
of like what I have to do. I think in terms of what can I do and what's going to help the GM. Because I've talked through that side of it, where I think a lot of people don't necessarily get that behind the scenes part of it as
Right.
early as I do.
Well, so that's so interesting because I saw in the chat, Coops said I was a player for about 6 months before I ended up as a forever DM,
Yeah, I am not a
which
forever DM. I have DM'd like 6 times maybe, and usually it's one shots for people who just want something to do. It's not. None of my DMing is on the internet, and it is
yeah.
very unlikely to ever be because that's not
Well,
my not why I do
Fair.
it.
it's so
Yeah.
interesting though because like this is, I feel like lately I've been seeing a trend of a lot more people's first experiences or early experiences of TTRPGs and D&D being like in the DM seat. And that's so interesting to me because I feel like that's so contrary to how it's been in the past, where we have like, this huge base of players who actively want to play D&D, but then a much smaller group of you know ever more sort of like put upon like DMs because there's so
Yeah.
many more people. And like I've definitely run across the problem before
Yeah.
where I'm like, there's so many people I want to play with, and I cannot run a game for all
That
of
would be a
them.
lot. Oh gosh. It's
Yeah,
Mm.
I think what's been really interesting is because I've got a few friends who've just recently picked up the GMing chair. And I think there's a very large difference now in that people are now saying, "Hey, I know that you always GM. What can you help me upskill so that you can be a player?" Like it's the give back to someone who is GMing all the time, I think is a lot more present now. So often those brand new baby GMs tables are full of other DMs or experienced players who know that this is their first time and know that they need support and know to just jump on the grenade, like do the thing, help the
Yeah.
plot, which then means that
Mm.
people are able to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I think that's, and like you also mentioned something earlier because I think that sort of I think is very healthy in terms of like the way that people are being introduced with TTRPGs. That there's like this getting the behind the screen, behind the curtain sort of thing, which like I'm, I think I'm on the record many times saying that I think that DMing should be demystified because like it is a cool thing that people do and it is a thing that requires a different set of skills other than playing, but I don't think it's something that like should be sort of kept sort of under wraps and sort of this weird arcane thing that's going on in the background. Like I
Yeah.
think everybody should know what's going on. It like my experience is one where like being a player made me a better GM and being a GM has made me a better player. Like it works both ways. So like
Yeah, I think I am a much better player and I'm like picked up at a lot of tables and for a lot of projects because I get it. And
mhm.
I'm not going to be there to be the obfuscatory person and I will look to
Yeah.
see which players aren't jumping in and being included and I will grab them and be like, "Okay, you're coming with me. We're doing some stuff together to make sure that it's collaborative and everyone's in and all of
Yeah.
that." And I think that's super important when you've got beginner players at your table. So Jo, who plays on Dungeons and Doctorates with me, her very first game, and I was not, to be clear, I'd only had like 5 or 6 like sessions before we started
Mhm.
recording. Her very first session is our session 0, is recorded, is on the internet forever.
Oh, wow.
Her very
Okay.
first session of D&D is recorded and on the internet forever. It was great. The beginning of
Amazing.
that story was like a scavenger hunt at a university. Ben did a really good job of like a way to tell, getting a bunch of people in a university context together and forcing them to do something and make a little team and go on. But there's sessions where I'm like, okay, we're just gonna pull you along a little bit with us, and or we're gonna shove you into the limelight and you're gonna do stuff because you're the bard. That
Yeah.
stuff I think kind of helps
I have
because if you know what you're looking at, it
yeah.
works.
So this is interesting because like this is I'm curious, and maybe you don't have a good answer for this, but I am curious like what how being getting involved in like a streamed thing so
Mhm.
early, do you think that that's like kind of colored the way that you approach TTRPGs in some way, or do you think, or maybe not colored is that's maybe the wrong word, but at the very least, like, do you think it's influenced in some way, like your approach to TTRPGs, both in the way that you do them and in the way
Um,
that you've learned and picked them up?
I think the latter is probably true. I don't think
Okay.
it's it. I think I approach them a lot like an improv scene or a play. So I don't think that would change whether I was at a table in someone's house or on stream. But I think the way that I think about as a player what I do and the choices I make in general is probably slightly different in that
Mm.
I am looking for plot progression and I'm looking for making sure that we don't just get into a session where we're sitting there for functionally 4 hours and we say nothing and we do nothing
Mhm.
because when you're creating content you can't do that. You
Right.
can have a shopping episode, you can have an everyone sitting around the campfire having a chat episode, that's fine, but you can't not have stuff happen. And so stuff can be
Yeah.
in conversation. Stuff can be you bought the big sword that you've been looking to get for the last however long. In a recent case for Dungeons and Doctorates, I bought the damaged bag of holding that has random stuff in it.
Oh, that's fun.
So now I have an object that I can pull random things out of and roll on a D100 table, and we
Oh,
find out
that's
what it is.
amazing.
There was a flamingo in it. It was alive.
Incredible.
It's great. Like,
It was
you
alive?
know,
Oh,
it was
good for
alive.
Man, what a champ.
I let it go. It ran around a shopping center. It was great. But you know, those kinds of things where like,
Ugh.
pro tip DMs, give your players chaos objects because it's
Mhm.
Yes.
great.
Agreed.
Oh,
It's great. Give them chaos because it will create story for you. But
Yeah.
so I think, and I also embrace what this gives
Oh,
me
hello.
in every game. What a dice roll is not a damn it, I didn't succeed crap.
Mhm.
It's okay, I didn't succeed. So if I roll a nat 1 and I'm trying to do an acrobatics check, I fell on my gosh darn face, and we're going to talk about how I fell on my face and the
Yeah.
ramifications of that, because that's funny. Firstly,
Yeah.
and secondly, like it's part of the story. Where I think a lot of people, I think that's probably the big thing is I embrace the story part of it because in an actual play you have to.
Right.
Where I think I'm not super into. I love combat. I have a science degree. I like numbers. Great. But I love combat, but I love combat that feels like purposeful. I'm not a war
Right.
gamer,
Yeah.
so I don't tend towards tables where that's the vibe.
Yeah.
But I don't know that I would anyway. I don't know that's got anything to do with how I started.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
That makes sense to me. And I think there's definitely like a period of time, like me early GM me definitely had a sort of attitude towards combat that was like it's just part of the game. That's kind of what this game is.
Yeah.
And not that I don't know that I went there was a period of time where I then swung around to being like only narrative combats. Now I think I sort of fall somewhere in the middle, but that middle place is purposeful combats, not necessarily narrative,
Yeah.
but like purposeful, where like it's there to serve a purpose, and that might be a narrative purpose, but it also might just be a purpose in terms of like you might throw a combat at a party just for the sake of making sure that they understand where they are.
Yeah.
You know?
Yes. The world exists around you. Stuff is
Yeah.
happening. One of the actual plays I play on, it's called Mistworld. It's another audio only one, but we play using the Tiny Dungeon system, which is a D6 system.
Yeah.
And what he does at the end of every session is he will record like something else that's happening somewhere else in the world. And so we are acutely aware that stuff is happening that isn't us. And it's like, okay, cool. This feels good and meaty, and like there's ramifications for us taking 3 days to do something as opposed to actually pushing through. And you can't just have a long rest because you want it. That's sometimes other people are relying on you for things.
Yeah.
Which can be such a different thing as well. But yeah, I think a lot of my beginnings pushed me into the storytelling and the things for purposes' sake, like you say, side of it all. Because firstly, that's more fun in general. Like, it's fun for the DM because it's collaborative and it's in their world and it feels good to be like, yes, I have justifiably done this thing and they've earned it, or they've walked into my trap.
Right.
But
what I've never done that. What are you talking?
I absolutely agreed too, because like when I got into TTRPGs, I was doing theater at the time, and so the story was a very important thing. The mechanics be gone with you.
Yeah.
And I'm not a I'm not really big on like the tactical combat stuff either.
Yeah.
Only to the extent that you have to be when you're like doing math. Like you want to come up with like a cool combo for like your spells if you're like a caster. But I just cannot get into like that mindset. But I do like combat because it does make for some fun shenanigans sometimes.
See, and I do tend to be on the tactical side of things, which is what makes me well suited to being on the GM side of the screen, because like I like the tactical aspect of things. I like that stuff. I think your you're probably right though. As a player, I probably tend not to be that as much.
And I think a lot of players like to walk in at the beginning of a session and know what they're walking into. I'm a big proponent of session zeros. I'm a big proponent of safety and consent gaming and all of that. That's a whole nother Ramblemancy that could go on for very many
Yeah.
hours. But
True.
I think it's really important that people are all at the same table for the same reason, and that includes the GM. Like if you're a GM who loves combat and you love the sort of tactical, all of that, and not a super storyteller, make sure your players know
Yeah.
before you start, because the last thing you want is them to be sitting there being like, this isn't what I thought I signed up for, either for a one shot or for a long term project.
Yeah, that's I've run into a lot, and I think that is probably one of the big reasons why I'm not that much of a fan of one shots, but I think it has less to do with one shots themselves and more to do with the way that people communicate about them ahead of time. Where there's definitely been times where like a I've made a character that I got. It takes me forever to get excited about a character, first of all. But when I finally do, it's usually for like one specifically cool thing about them that I'm like, all right. And I have now built up from that one thing. I've built around it, but it's all sort of hinges on that one thing. And then if I don't get to do that one thing, then now I feel like I just didn't do anything. And
Did you communicate that to your DM?
see, that's where I've recently come back around to, where I'm like, you know what? I think that's one of those things that, like, in fact, weren't we talking about this on Ramblemancy just a couple weeks ago? Or was that a separate conversation? I can't even keep track anymore.
I'm not sure. I have missed the last couple of Ramblemancies because I've had to work and had shows on, so I don't know.
Was it with Joe that we were... yeah, okay. Thank you, Lynn. With Joe, we were talking about how, like, communicating specifically to your DM the thing that you are excited about with your character. And that was like specifically like for me that's a relatively like it sounds so insane to say it, right, because it seems so obvious, but like it just hasn't
it's not obvious
been
until you look at it and go
exactly and then you look, and that's what I've just recently done. I'm like, you know, I really should have been saying to my GMs, like, hey, I built this character. Here's the thing I'm very specifically excited about. I would love an opportunity to make that happen.
Yeah.
So it seems really obvious now, but yeah.
Yeah, I think that's so true, especially with one shots. So we do a lot of one shots, or like one shots from our recording perspective. It's usually like a 3-shot when we release it. Things like we do things called kobold capers, where everyone's a kobold. We go on a heist. Like that's the thing. But we always preface that to people. It's like, this is what it is. There's episodes. Here's examples. This is what we're doing. Like, or, you know, here's, we've got some coming out next week. Oh God, it is next week. I need to do social media promo. Yep. Called Adventurers Acquisition. No, Adventurer. Basically, it's a bunch of clerics all going out to save adventurers who get themselves stuck.
Excellent.
But we preface that with the person who was coming in. We were like, this is the vibe. This is the kind of story it's going to be. This is something that we're going to do over and over. So it doesn't matter. Like, your character is embedded in this team, but we won't necessarily have the same team every time. So you can kind of be your own type of person, but we want you to be like you're in an office with a bunch of people and be the archetype of who you are in the office. And they chose to be like the one who really doesn't want to be there and is really quiet quitting in the corner. We're like, perfect. Absolutely. We all know that guy. Yep.
Yeah.
And we all know how to interact with that guy. And we all know what the fun part about that character is. And
right.
I play in archetypes a lot for that reason, because the DM knows what to do with me. Because it's like, nope, you're the stuck-up, prissy high elf wizard from the well-off family who cares about reputation. Or you're the little, like, friendly one from the tiny farming community who just wants to explore the world. Like, you know what's fun about that. Don't kill their parents. Please leave their parents alive. But, like, you know, go do mean stuff to their village, or give them stakes in different ways that they can play with as a character.
Well, so I know it's something that we've talked about before, but I feel like it's always worth bringing these things up again, because who knows how, like, our perspectives on them have changed over time. But Freeman, like, you've talked before about your start in TTRPGs. You sort of started to get into it just now. So remind me, like, what was that like? Your start in TTRPGs?
It was a really wild time. I think Bush was still president.
That was a wild time.
That was a different world back
That was
then. My
oh
word.
god, it really was.
Yeah, I think I kind of bounced around with some different like I think my one experience of mine was a friend of mine got into the hobby, if we will, and was really interested in Dungeons and Dragons, and did a lot of like reading of various like fantasy books, and I think he kind of felt like he could make his own like his own system. So he's like really and he also ended up playing Magic later on. I don't know if that tied in somehow, but he loved creating his own like scenarios, and making his own stories, even to the extent of like reading the book and be like, "Yep, this is a really cool idea, but what if I did this instead?"
Yeah.
And so he wanted me to just kind of play along because it's a friend of mine from way back in the day, and we went and like played pretend all the time. Like you're
Yeah.
like running through the woods. You got a stick. You're like then you're like, but I've got a shield. Haha. So it was just like that, but it was like he wanted me to break the system. He wanted me to like purposely do outrageous things. So that was really just about like just pretending and just doing the most outrageous. There was like a cloak of holding that like he wanted to do like something like that, and then like I went into the cloak of holding, and then it ate me up, and I was like there was like 2 sessions where I was just in this different realm. Um, then later on in high school, Lucas and I played a lot of games too, and those were mostly run. I think we did like a rotation. A lot of us ran the game, but I think it was mostly you, Lucas, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah.
It was D6 systems. You were trying to come up with a different like way to do the dice. It was all don't. It's okay. You don't have to make that
bad.
face.
Yeah, no,
It was.
I
But
do
it
have
was.
to make that face. I do
It
have
was
to make this
then.
face.
It was
But it was
then, not
then.
now. There's
Oh,
then. It's then. It's past you. That's
and
in the
it's led us
past.
to.
You don't
And
have to
it's
worry
led
about
us.
them anymore.
It's led
Yeah.
us to where we are today.
I guess. That doesn't mean I have to be
guess,
happy
yeah.
about it.
And I was also doing a lot of
I
theater
can
at the
appreciate it
time,
without
so
being happy about it.
That's fair.
that's fair. That's fair.
But
So
yeah.
I was
Well-
just looking for other ways to do theater too, because I was doing theater for a group here. I was just looking for more avenues to get to get that serotonin, you know.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think I'll ask you the same question I asked Kate because I feel like we have broached this subject before, even just in like our own conversations off stream. But I'm not sure that we've like touched on this specifically. How do you think the way that, or do you think that the way that you came into TTRPGs has sort of influenced the way that you approach them or have like picked them up?
Say, um, I I don't even know, honestly.
That's fair. Yeah. No,
Yeah. It's a hard question.
It is a hard question. I find, which is one of the reasons why I find it such a fascinating question, because it's like I always think I'm always one of those people who like looks at everything and tries to backtrace how it got to be the way that it was, and so like looking at those things, I find it just a fascinating sort of exercise. But yeah, so yeah,
I can tell you this though.
yeah,
I can tell you this. I don't know how to entirely answer the question, but at all probably actually. My brain is over there.
Listen, I think we have a long history of establishing that we have one singular brain cell here at Rule of Lore, and we just pass it around on rotation. So
Yeah.
So you have it.
I don't have it. I don't know what happened to it.
I think John took it to cons.
That's probably true.
That,
You know what?
that
It's probably
brain cell is going
it's
to come back to us and be completely just like.
You know what? You know what I'll say about that? It's where it's needed most right now.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Fair enough. I guess I just feel like I don't know, because like I feel like I have in a kind of a serious, to change the tone a little more serious now all of a sudden. I kind of feel like I sometimes feel like I've become, or I've forgotten how to be a good player.
Interesting. How
I feel
so?
like I don't know.
Okay.
I've been trying to figure out for a long time. But
Well,
I
what do you
feel
think makes
like
a good player? Because what you think makes a good player will determine that sentence, right?
I
That's
think
true.
that I mean, I haven't really figured out how to like, I've lost a good player. I'm like, in terms of like, I think I overthink about other people's needs at the table. So I prioritize that, and then I don't actually ever, I don't do much.
Gotcha. Yeah. I could I suppose yeah, I could see that being a thing. Well, I know that this is in our to give you a little peek behind the curtain, which is also behind the curtain. In our home game, a little bit.
Several curtains.
This is sort of something that has kind of we've recently addressed as an issue with our like home game,
Mm.
where that has kind of been a. I think you're not alone in that because I think our whole group sort of had the same issue,
Yeah, yeah.
um, where we ended up with a whole group who actively ran away from anything that was like potentially um, like conflict, and not in the normal way that players tend to be conflict averse, but in the way where they're just like it was more that we just sort of defaulted towards inaction because nobody was taking a moment to make a decision about anything because everybody was very much trying to keep make sure everybody else at the table was needs were being met, but nobody was looking after their own and therefore nobody was doing anything. And so it was a weird situation. I've never been a part of a situation like that before.
Same.
So I think you're not probably
Yeah.
alone in that.
I think, yeah, a lot of people love spotlighting others. I'm guilty of it too. And it's tricky because you then go, oh, I forgot to spotlight myself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, which can be everyone at the table's fault. Like,
Yeah.
you're not there by yourself. You're doing good player stuff. People are just forgetting to do good player stuff to you.
Yeah. No, it's true. This is also stuff that we talked about with Joe too, but like a thing that I remember that we've had to like sort of do just rectify this in our to begin to rectify this in our group is that I had to say like, all right, your your responsibility as a player is to determine you get to deter like your responsibility as a player to the table is to sort of determine
Mm.
what you are doing when the spotlight is on you, which means that you can choose to pull people into it with you, you know. But it's sort of
Yeah.
the DM's job to determine where that spotlight is in the moment, right? And then it's up to you to determine what you do with it as a player, um, and like that's how you can all sort of respect everybody else at the table, um, and like that is the thing about TTRPGs is they are a conversation, and that means that in terms of practicality, they function like a conversation too, where it's a back and forth. It is a constant interplay of like the push, the pull, the like
Hmm.
pass it over to this person, and like, hey, you look like you want to say something about this. What do you think? Right? It's that kind of thing. But it is very easy in a conversation also to sort of feel like, well, I don't want to step on anybody's toes, so I'm gonna just sort of stay back here and just kind of like listen. Um, so yeah, that's I think a very relatable and understandable place to have to be. But yeah.
Yeah. What about you? Where did you start? Like, let me turn that big spotlight camera
Okay, cool. Speaking of spotlights,
back over
well,
there. Yeah.
I
Mm.
think what I've chosen to do with this spotlight is I will answer your
Yeah.
question. So
Uh-huh.
I don't know. It's
Good
kind of
choice.
weird.
Good choice.
It's weird because I don't have a strong memory of the exact beginning of it. But if I had to choose,
Mm.
I've broken up my time in TTRPGs in my mind into like certain eras. So I have like multiple beginnings. But like if you want to go back to the very very beginning of how I got into TTRPGs, period, it was when I was I think 12, and a friend of mine, a group of my friends were playing something semi resembling D&D. It was D&D, but they weren't really paying a whole lot of attention to the rules. They were just sort of taking the aesthetic of D&D and D and then doing whatever they wanted with it, which was they had a blast with it, you know. Um, And then one day they asked me if I wanted to be part of it, and I was like, yeah, sure. And I showed up, and it was cool, but it wasn't quite what I wanted out of the experience or what I was expecting out of it. Because what I was expecting was something more like what we would do outside, you know, running around, like basically what you said, Freeman, which was sort of like running around with sticks in the woods and playing pretend, which it is that, but the whole rules thing got me a little bit tripped up, where I was like, I don't understand these rules, and also I feel like they slow down the like cool action sequences that I have in my head, you know, and like, and so it just didn't quite. I kind of bounced off it a little bit until high school, when Henry, who was sort of who's founder of one of the other founders of this channel, called me up out of the blue, because up to that point I wasn't friends with Henry. I was friends with his brother, his younger brother, and Henry called me up out of the blue and was like, "Hey, would you be interested in doing this thing?" And from then on, we did like a weird rotation of like various indie TTRPGs that were like, some of them now are like pretty mainstream TTRPGs, but back then they were still like very much in their infancy, sort of being passed around free RPG sites and stuff like that. That he would like download them. We'd play a new game and do that. Um, and then somewhere along the line, I just was like, "This is cool," but I feel like there's so many things that he could be doing here, because it was Henry running them. And I was like, "There's so many things he could be doing here that just like that he's not, that like that this doesn't quite get to the heart of what I think is cool." And so of course the next natural step was, I'm gonna run one. So and do it the way I think that should happen, and the rest, as they say, is history. But yeah, that's kind of what my start was sort of a weird whirlwind that I barely remember much of. um just sort of trying a bunch of different systems and not really understanding what was going on most of the time. But yeah, yeah. That's kind of my beginning in TTRPGs.
Trying a bunch of systems and not knowing what's going on most of the time feels like the origin story of most TTRPG players.
I don't know, man. I'm just here to roll some dice. Just tell me what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
No, it's such a weird thing, because like during that time, like I think we tried out like Fate back when it was like at the very beginning of, and then I can never keep this straight in my mind, because at the time I really was not at all tuned in to TTRPGs and stuff like that. So, but there was a system. Was Fudge in some way related to Fate? Did they become one become the other? I honestly don't know. There are a lot of systems like that that now have sort of grown and evolved and are now a pretty well established thing, that at the time were very like beginning of their run kind of stuff. We're talking like the beta versions of these things.
Yeah.
But yeah, I always just remember like the I think it's Fate that has like the pluses and minuses on the D6s. And
I think so.
yeah, I always remember picking those up going, what the hell is this? What do we do with this? And being very confused. So that was kind of my intro to TTRPGs.
And look where you are now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry.
No,
Also, sorry, chat. I am coughing because I've had a virus. I am fine. It is just my body being a jerk. So I'm all good.
Kate is actively dying
no, it's
on
obnoxious.
stream in front of us.
I'm actively dying on stream. Yeah, that's what I'm doing. My last hurrah.
And I'm so honored that you chose to spend it with us.
Excuse me.
Near our affiliate anniversary. I mean,
God, yeah.
Once we
that's how you celebrate your affiliate anniversary. It's okay. I was gonna bring it up later.
We literally were talking about it right before we went live, and I was like, "Yeah, no, I totally forgot about it,"
good.
and then immediately once again forgot about it.
But then it came up at a moment that was partially humorous.
Yeah. Yeah. Yesterday was our affiliate anniversary. It was what, 6 years? Is that right?
Yeah.
No, 5 years. 5 years.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm in the wrong. Well, you see, we have a weird thing where like the months don't make sense, because some are 31, some are 30, and every once in a while, like we have a leap year.
Yeah, time is a weird soup anyway. So you know,
Yeah.
I
time
say
is
just make every
I did
single.
just roll my death save. I passed. It's fine.
That's a
Good,
really. By the
good.
way, sorry to derail this, but it is Ramblemancy Cape. That is an excellent D20. May I take a? And may that's that one?
Ooh.
Yes, incredible.
That's
So,
so cool.
this to shamelessly promote something else that I work on
Yeah.
and with. This is from Meeples and Dragons, who are an Australian TTRPG store. They distribute from other places. I do not remember the origin of this dice. The box is over there somewhere. But they have all these in multiple different colors. So I have the blue one with like it's got like clear bubbles in the middle of it. But there's
Yeah.
like a red one and a purple one and a gold one. But it is Meeples and Dragons spelled like I have now put it in chat. Nope, without the square bracket on the end because apparently I can't type. But I'll actually be live with them on their channel. Oh god, time zones. Hang on. It's 5 p.m. for me, which is 7 p.m.
God.
Eastern, which is
Which would
hang on.
be
No, 5 p.m. for me is 5 p.m. East Coast American time
okay.
at the moment.
Wait.
Because it's a 12-hour time difference between me and Connecticut right now. So you can work it out from that. It's 12 hours from now. 12 hours time difference. So it's 5 would be 5 a.m. East Coast time.
Really? I thought. Wait,
Tonight.
hold on. I thought I was certain that that
AOS to PP.
between.
Let me work it out. It's fine.
I was because like
Yeah.
that would be a 3-hour time difference from us. So it would be. So I was certain that we had a 16-hour time difference between us. Not, but I'm mathing at 15 right now.
No, I think it's 15. It's
Dang,
15.
okay.
So 5 p.m. for me. For you guys, is 2 a.m.
Okay.
So you probably won't come hang out, but that's okay.
I mean, I'll probably be awake, but I shouldn't be, but I will be.
Shouldn't be, yeah. So we stream over there every second Saturday, and I play a
Cool.
little. She's not Irish. That's just vaguely what the accent is. Halfling, genie warlock, who is very adorable and is
cool.
very nice to everybody.
Excellent.
And disappears on a semi-regular basis. So I'll be back having disappeared and come back. Because that's what happens when you do other projects that occasionally clash with your D&D.
Yeah.
Is you build a mechanic into your character that means you can just go away.
Absolutely.
Come
Yeah.
back.
Yeah. I wanted to. So on the subject of beginnings, I'll start us off with another question, which was, what's your favorite way that either a session or a campaign has started, either that you have participated in or that you've heard about?
I have a lot of love for the D and Doctorates, like let's throw people together in a scavenger hunt thing that's been organized, because I think that worked really well and set the tone of like, it's a university, right? So not everyone's going to be friends, but and so you'll meet random people. So forcing people together was kind of cool. We also did one for a one shot I did that was Thirsty Sword Lesbians.
Okay.
I want to say. Yeah, Thirsty Sword Lesbians. And it was very much the you meet in a pub, but the idea was it was the pub at the end of the universe where everyone was a regular. So
Excellent.
you kind of everyone knew everyone's business anyway. And so it didn't matter kind of that it was a you all meet in a pub, because you didn't meet like that. It was like
Right.
I was sitting at the end of the bar giving the bartender crap, and then so and so was on the floor passed out under the table, and it was a really neat. Everyone's character got built in that moment, rather than
cool.
just you all meet in a pub. I'm also a fan of starting people on the road.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get a pub scene. You don't get getting given the
Oh.
quest scene.
Yeah.
You have the quest. I'm not letting you
Yeah.
fudge around for 2 hours thinking about whether you might want to take this quest with these people. No, you're all here to play D&D. You're in the cart. You're on the road. You can learn about each other on the way. Get out.
Yeah.
Get out, get going. Or the equivalents of that, anyway.
Yeah.
No, I think I firmly agree with that. A lot of the things I love about the beginning of a campaign is traveling to some quest that you picked up somewhere along the way, and you have to do like the low level travel to get to a place to figure out the information. And there's nothing like magical. You're just you're just you're trudging along. There's something so awesome about that, and just like, oh, I guess we have to figure out how to. Where I guess we're walking and all the scenes and all the role play and figure out who is who on the trail or in the middle of the woods, and then there's some like I guess some creatures attack you, and then there's some more that comes from that. It's just
Yeah.
absolutely,
Getting people going. You're
yeah.
going. You're doing stuff, not just sitting on your hands for half a session.
Yeah. I'm trying to think about my favorite. I think it was also an on the road one, but it was on the road with some like not just like we're going on an adventure on the road, but I started them off. They were like refugees from a city that had just had like a massive coup take place.
Yeah.
So they're like fleeing from this like thing, and then they get ambushed on the road. And I think that was a really strong one because it was a fun one because it already carried the implied gravity of the thing they left behind. So you're starting out with like big stakes already that the party doesn't have to. It informs everything they're doing, but it doesn't. They don't have to engage with it, which was really cool.
Yeah.
And it really really strongly informed the way that not only that session played out, but also that the first adventure played out. So that was a cool one.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's always hard when you start something and you expect people to have a conversation, especially if you've got beginner players, right? Like,
Yeah,
oh, I
yeah.
don't, I don't know what are we supposed to talk about? We don't know anything about each other.
And I think there's ways to do the like we start in a tavern, but and I think Freeman
Mm-hmm.
was it our Axiom campaign that I started out in the tavern? Yeah, it started out in the tavern, and there was but like the main point of the whole thing was I told them right away, like, you guys are sitting at the same table. It's a crowded inn and you're sitting at the same
Oh,
table. And then I was like,
yeah.
oh, and as you're sitting there, sort of getting acquainted a little bit, a storyteller steps up and the whole inn goes quiet. And then I had the sort of a storyteller give them a thing that was happening. And then suddenly the audience started heckling the storyteller. And like I had a thing happening, right? You
Yeah,
give them something to react to. If you're going to have them start in a tavern, give them something to react to.
Yeah.
Don't just go, all right, talk. Like, that's not great.
yeah, yeah. Or if and I think about this in terms of actual plays because I've watched like if you're gonna do a session zero where everyone gets to know each other, and then
Yeah.
let your characters back reference stuff that's happened to them together in the past. Or when you're
Yeah.
doing like it's one of the reasons I love like Kids on Bikes and that
Mm-hmm.
entire set of systems because in the character creation is some how do you know this person? What relationships do you already have? Which means when you begin, you know who's buds, you know who's going to hang out with who, you know who's got a problem with who and what has happened before. People starting with here is my character and they are my character and that is all the information I have. It doesn't go
Yeah.
anywhere. You don't get to begin together, which makes that collaborative part of collaborative storytelling difficult.
Yeah. If it's a little bit like you want to like have them kind of take the ball and run with it, but like you got to
Mm-hmm.
throw it to them first. Like that's the thing. You got to throw it to them first.
Yeah.
Uh and yeah, that's a big deal. I've actually been thinking about TTRPGs in terms like beyond just sort of the obvious TTRPGs in terms of a conversation, not just in terms of like mechanically it's a conversation because obviously we all know that but in terms of the dynamically and the way that it is like a conversation because there is a certain ebb and flow and everybody contributes to it, but the way I think about it is there's sort of an Ouroboros of like the GM gives the players something to react to, then they react to that, then the GM reacts to that, and then uses that and gives them a new thing to react to, and the players give and it just goes like that in a circle forever, and that is kind of what TTRPGs are and should be. And sometimes as DMs we do things, or rather don't do things that
Yeah.
make it difficult for the players to interact because we're not setting them up to do it. We're not giving them context, or we're not giving them that kind of thing. So there is a certain amount of that, and I've been thinking about that a lot lately because it's something bearing out currently in my own current home game. But sometimes you, and it's especially difficult with a group like mine that I trust so much to pick up the ball and run. But sometimes even with a group that's really good about doing that, you still have to give them stuff occasionally. You have to give them something to react to, and that's the thing that's like
Yeah.
I've been thinking about it a lot lately.
I backed a while ago a set of books. Wow, my green screen filter's having a time. It's a series of roll and play books. There's like a player's notebook and some other stuff as well. But I grabbed down from behind me. This is the fantasy character kit. So the idea is that you can roll up characters very, very quickly. But each of the sections has like party relationships built into how you build your characters.
Hell yeah.
So, let me go to like the bards and performers one, which is page 42, because of course it is. So it's like you can roll a d20 and it will give you like options. And you roll. The idea is that you roll for each member of your party. So, for example, I rolled a 13. It would be like so and so met you when they enrolled into a stage show you were a part of. So they decided to come along, and whether they stayed there is a completely different part of that. But at least you've got that's how you met each other. Or 18. So and so thinks you're a happy-go-lucky charlatan. And like you just have these little bits that are built for you, and it's for the same for all of the different character types. So there's like chunks about artificers and tinkerers, and like there's druids and geomancers. But it also gives you things like backstory information, origins, goals,
That's so cool.
appearance, equipment, wild shape quirks about your wild shape. So if you were a druid, every creature you transform into 12 smells like an old wet dog and has a shaggy look. Every time you transform into something, it's got this similar vibe. Like, and I love stuff like this, especially for beginner players, or for people who are beginning playing a type that they don't normally play.
That'd be very helpful for me, actually.
Yeah. I feel like Kate. I feel like rapidly our conversations are turning into Kate tells me about cool things and I take notes. What was this again?
Kate has resources because I had to. So it's called. I will pop a link in chat to their stuff because that's they've got more than what I have, and some of it I didn't pick up because it's not my jam. They also send out regular like free tables that you can roll on.
Well, that's fun.
So, Roll and Play Press are the guys. They are, I think, UK based, but they have like one-shot adventures. Toolkits is what I mostly have. So they've got like a sci-fi one. They've got like a fantasy character kit, which is sort of what this is. There's Game Masters ones for fantasy and for sci-fi, and they do deliver. This is obviously the fantasy kit, but they do have science fiction ones as well. And then the player's notebook themselves are like, they're not that interesting, but they are deliberately designed so that you've got something that you've got like all your racial traits and your feats, and there's where your character sheet goes, and then so much space for notes. Make notes, people. As you can see, I haven't used it because I haven't got a character. I haven't started a long-term character since it arrived, so that's why I haven't got it. But they're not hyper expensive. But they've also got one shots you can play. Free content. So they've got like campaign builders and little one shots that you can have a crack at, see whether you like their stuff. But yeah, I really like what they do. I am not sponsored. So cool. I just like what they do. If they want to sponsor me, that'd be great because I like big ups to them all the time.
Absolutely, no, that's so cool. I'm always looking for like new resources like that and things like that because I love tables. I love rolling on them. I love randomly determining things that are about my characters and my world. So I'm a big fan of that.
I'm a big fan of random tables. It's also why I love like Quest, because the book will just give me, if I'm like I'm stuck, I need a table to roll on because I can't make my brain do the thing. I'll pull out that book and just be like, yep, Thank you for telling me something about my character I needed to know. Thanks so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, I just wanted to point out, Coop said something I stole when making characters from another system is you make a character with a broad concept that is a sentence, a major flaw, and a secondary sentence to flesh out your character. It
Yep.
helped a lot as a DM and as a player. That's super cool. Yeah, and
Who are you? What do you want? And what do you care about the most in the world? That's it.
yeah,
That's all you need.
and I also agree here, Lynn. Shamelessly steal stuff from various systems that have character building stuff I like. 100%. I do that all the time because like I love D&D's like Xanathar's roll on your life or this is your life, like roll your stuff. I love those
Yep.
tables, but sometimes they're a little too over the top, and I like something that's a little bit more grounded, and for that I will steal from other systems shamelessly, and it's great. It's such a I cannot recommend
Yeah.
stealing other systems' character creation methods enough.
I think the other thing that I love about this, by the way, is it feels D&D, but it's not. It is any fantasy system. They've
Yeah.
deliberately not, like, they've made it compatible with 5e, but it's supposed to be for any fantasy role-playing system. That's the
Yeah.
idea. It's got, D&D wrapping on it, barbarian, bard, those kinds of
Sure.
things,
Sure.
but that's not what it's for. It's not just
Right.
not
It
specifically for that system.
it's as you were explaining it, it reminded me of this other resource that I found years and years ago. I want to say it was called something like Character Hot Seat or something like that. That
Oh,
basically,
yeah, vaguely.
yeah, where basically it was a similar thing where you'd have like for different, like classes and things like that. Again, also not D&D specific, but there were like, like that one sort of D&D wrapping. Um, where basically you'd roll on it and it would ask you a question and you could either answer yes and incorporate that into your character's backstory, or you could say no and then you had to add a detail. um,
Yeah.
where you had to say like no, but I was this. Like, were you the most skilled swordsman in your village? And you could say no, but he was my best friend, or something like that, right? Like you could do that kind
Yeah.
of thing.
No, but I always wanted to be and hated that guy because he was like,
Yeah,
yeah, that
exactly.
that stuff's
And like
yeah.
I'm a huge
I
fan of
do a
those.
lot of I do a lot of character building based on how I would build a character for theater, because I think a lot of people go, oh, you're given the character and you know who it is. I'm like, yeah, if you're lucky. Like I have
Yeah.
played characters like I was in fact, right now over on another channel, I'm currently Polonius in Hamlet. But that
Mm.
character has a lot of backstory, and you
Yeah.
know who they are because they've been done 1,000 different ways. Sure. I was Nurse Ratchet in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, but we did an Australian version, so I
Okay.
couldn't do all the things that the American version,
Right.
all the reference, like we changed the script, but not by much. And yes, we had all of the permissions required to do this. This is like we
Hmm.
officially were the first people to write an Australian version. The chief was changed into a local
That's cool.
Indigenous man, so we had to do some rewriting to make sure that it all
Right.
worked, but it was all approved. And but I couldn't create the same character that we knew. And Ratchet had just come out, and I had to stop watching it because I couldn't do Sarah Paulson's Nurse Ratchet. I couldn't
Yeah.
do other people. I had to do my own.
Yeah.
And so I was like, cool, I have to look at who I am. Like, what do I care? What do
Mm.
I care about? What is my version of this character? Which is, I think, people go, oh, yeah, but I have my information. I have my character. I'm like, no, you don't. You don't yet.
Yeah.
Because I could take the same stats and come up with someone completely different to you.
Mhm.
I could, you take a bard who's got a really crappy charisma. Great. Do it. I'm going to play them like they're trying real hard. They're trying real hard, but they're a D-list celebrity and they're never going to be higher than that. And
Yep.
like that's their lot in life. Or you could play it as like, no, I am the most charismatic bard in the world, and they have no charisma. Like you could
Yeah.
do so many things with the same stats. And this kind of stuff is the stuff I love because it's like this gives you the flavors that you could
Yeah.
choose to play with if you want them.
Yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
always love when, like, speaking of like the different ways of playing, I always love the example of like Han Solo. Like Han Solo
Mm.
is like a good example, I think, of like a like if he were a TTRPG character, mechanically I think he'd have like a low charisma, but like in terms of like the flavor of the character, who he is, has something sort of likable about him. But like, think of all the times Han Solo has tried to convince anybody of anything, and how well that has gone for him. It's like Han Solo has high charisma. Anytime anybody says that, I'm like, oh yeah, totally. Yeah, we're all fine here. How are you?
Right.
Like that's not a high charisma moment.
No. No.
So like
He's like a rogue who's trying real hard.
he's
Um,
trying real hard. He's got like a
Love
10 at
that.
best. He's got a 10 at best.
like, yeah.
Yeah.
He's a swashbuckler. Like, let's be realistic. That's a swashbuckling rogue right there. That Christmas hero is not as high as he thinks it is.
No, exactly. And that's the part that matters, is that he thinks it's way higher than it is. And imagine how much fun a character like that would be to play. You know, like that's just like that is I don't know. So like the different ways that there are of playing characters, you're right. You're absolutely right that there's like just having the stats and the character sheet isn't enough to tell you everything there is to know about that character. It's a good place to start, but it doesn't tell you much.
It's the beginning of the character, you might say, but not the end.
Look at that! Look at that! Bringing it back around.
Very true. Very true.
Yeah, but it is right. You could I mean, part of me really at some point wants to do, and I think I would prefer to play in this than run it, but that idea of everyone gets the same character sheet. You get the same stats. You get the same. You're all playing the same thing, and just go okay. But your characters have to be different.
Right.
Go. So like it's basically it's all bards or it's all clerics or it's all whatever, but they're not all going to be the same. Not every life cleric is the same. Not every ranger is the same. Let's give everyone Aragorn's stats and see how many Aragorns we get.
Oh yeah.
Like,
that's
stats are your beginning. They are not your end.
That's a good point. That
That's my shirt. That's our beginning, not an end. Yeah.
I like just went off into like sort of imagining what that game would be like, and like I don't know. I think that would yield such interesting characters, because this was something I was starting to think about when you were talking about the like different ways of playing a character, because I think so much of the way that we make characters is heavily informed by convention and tradition. And so like when people talk about like the horny bard or whatever, right? Like that's the thing that is just sort of like automatically off the top of the head, but like you don't have to do that.
I'm a bard main, and I have never played a horny bard. It's absolutely not my vibe. I don't do it. I play anything but.
Yeah, or the overtly pious cleric. You know, like we think of these characters as being, you know, but I think those are useful. Those are useful archetypes, but I think they often get in the way, because it's sort of shorthand that we default to when it comes to making our characters. And I think that's like doing something like what you're talking about, Kate, where everybody has the same character sheet, but they have to all make different characters, would be a really excellent exercise in breaking those sorts of
I mean, and if you didn't want to go that far, you could just go, okay, here are the stats. Everyone has the same stats. So, or everyone's just got 10s across the board. What character are you creating with 10s across the board? Right. What are you going to do with it? Because you can do whatever you want, but what do you want to do? Or like, part of me says that you'd actually probably want just pairs of people playing on the same character sheet, just because if you had, I don't know about a team of 6 horny bards that'll all end up being like either very verbose or very horny, and that someone's not going to be happy at that table.
Listen, like, have you ever been
someone's like
as an extrovert myself, have you ever been in a whole group of extroverts? Nothing happens. Nothing gets done.
Yes, and it's so tiring.
It really is.
So tiring. It's backstage at the theater.
Yeah.
It's so tiring.
As an extrovert, I get tired because we're all like, everybody's trying to like, everybody's talking, and it's just nothing gets done.
2 show days. Oh my god, my flashbacks to like 2 weeks ago. It's like, to be clear, I'm not I sit on the border between the two. I need both.
Sure.
But yeah, when I'm around a room full of extroverts, I'm like, oh God, this is
It's a
hell.
lot.
This is a lot. Goodbye, all of my energy.
That's what we need.
Um,
We need
Yeah.
introverts, because if the room is only full of extroverts, then the only people they have to talk to is each other, and that's a nightmare for everyone involved.
Happy to oblige.
Thank you for your service, Freeman.
Oh, don't mention it. It is a it's a
Oh
don't
god.
mention the war.
no.
Oh
Oh, that's a
god.
lot.
But no,
That's a lot.
I think that's kind of where I sit is like, yeah, you need characters that are of different types, and you know, sometimes that works beautifully, and you get a party that gets along really well. But herding in the table of cats that is intelligence is, yeah, I mean, it's true, it's true. But it's that idea, I think of, yeah. You go.
Yeah. No, just that whole cast that's from Star Trek Intelligence. Lynn and I I was, and Lynn still is, cast member on Star Trek Intelligence. That whole cast is just full of a lot of people with very strong ideas about their characters and very strong ideas, and like no compunctions whatsoever about like pushing those ideas, and it's very cool and interesting. It's also chaos in the best way possible.
Yeah. I think I fall a little bit the way you do, Freeman, in that I will forego what my character wants to keep the story going. And so I need to stop doing that. But often because I'm in a room full of people who are like, these are my opinions. And I'm like, okay, I don't care about
Well,
mine that much.
yeah,
I care, but like
yeah.
not that much. Like you care a lot. I don't. It's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm working on it too. It's all good. It's we'll just we'll keep each other honest.
Yeah.
We'll just check. How are you doing?
Did you
I'm
stand
all
up for
right.
yourself today?
The
Come on.
spotlight I took it and I threw it on the ground. I couldn't. It was a
Okay.
panic moment.
You took it for a second though, so I'm proud of you. It's
Oh,
steps. You've taken steps.
yeah, I had to get my footing underneath me first. I felt like I was gonna fall right over. And I'm sitting down, so I mean, figure that one out.
Well, okay, so it's so interesting too, though, because I feel like this whole thing, like, we're constantly, I think, evolving. John's always quick to bring up the idea of like being treating being a player as a skill, because like it is. We do like we treat GMing as if it's a skill, but playing we kind of don't. And it's an evolving process, just like GMing is an evolving process, right? Like you're gonna have these. I will joke sometimes about how like I'll look back, especially recently, where I'll look back at things that I did in a previous campaign that were so cool and were awesome, and I look back at what I'm doing now, and I'm like, how did I get worse at this? And like you'd figure like over time I would have gotten better, but I got worse somehow. And like the truth is, it's an evolving process. Like you're gonna have moments of being better at some things and worse at others, and then as you choose depending on as you choose your focus, right, what you choose to focus on in terms of your own skill, those things are naturally going to be better and progress over time, and the other things that you don't tend not to focus on will sort of fall back a little bit. And it just is a constant sort of evolving process. And I think the only thing that you have to really think about when you're going through these things is, at what point do I still care about improving certain things, right? Because like I think there's something to be said about, like, just because it's a skill doesn't mean you have to always be improving it. Like you can reach. I was having this conversation with a friend the other day where he was saying like, at some point you got to ask yourself the question of like, how invested am I in this? Where, can I get to a point where I'm like, I've done this, and realistically, given how much investment I can put into this, I will not get better than I currently am, and that's okay, right? Like that's, I don't know. I think that there is a certain amount of that too, but yeah, I think we're not accustomed to thinking of being players as much of a skill as being a GM is.
So it's interesting because I think that is true generally.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it is not.
Okay.
Because, and I think it comes from that theater improv like background where
Yeah.
like nothing is perfect. You will always get told that something is wrong, and like I am my own worst critic in the most toxic way.
Mm-hmm.
I do not do compliments well. there is a redeem on my own Twitch for that very purpose that I'm doing. Like, someone has enough channel points right now, and I'm like, oh god, they're gonna make me read a compliment out about myself.
Yes.
But that idea of like, I go, okay, well, what did I do that session that I liked? What did I not do that session and that I like want to do differently next time? And I will like that's how I approach it. But I know that there are a lot of people for whom that is not the case.
Right.
I think it is a case of if you're stagnating and you're just kind of doing the same thing over and over again, why are you still playing? What is it about this game
Sure.
that you like? Because if it's that you like playing, is it that you're just playing the same thing over and over again and you've kind of got it down pat and you're like, I'm good. And if you're good, that's fine.
Yeah.
Just do you. But if you want to do something different, you can. The plot is not set. You
Yeah.
can talk to your GM. You can change. The path is not concreted until it is walked in any
Yeah.
TTRPG.
I think, and I think my statement about that was sort of a intended to be a general one, because I think I tend to fall on the
Yeah.
same side of this as you, Kate. Where like, for me with playing and GMing, to me it's a thing where I look at it and like I am never going to be like to arrive at a place where I'm like I am as good as I'm going to get, because that doesn't make sense to me. That's not how I process things in a lot of ways. Like
Yeah.
I look at it in terms of like I can always improve something, and that's not just any commentary on how good I currently am. It's just there are always things that I could be improving, you know, and that's fun for me to do. I enjoy doing
Mm.
that kind of thing. Uh, but yeah, because so yeah, I think I tend to fall kind of in the same boat as you, really, where there's always going to be stuff that I could work on.
Yeah. I think it's also though that that's not true for everyone. Not everyone plays for the same reasons,
Yeah,
and that's a hard thing for like brains to. Yeah, I think you're right in chat there about that GMs have to do work before a session where players think they can just show up.
yeah,
Don't do that. Like you need to know what's happened before now. You need to
mm-hmm.
know how your character feels about it. You need to know your character sheet because it's not the GM's job to know your character sheet. That's your character. You know them.
Yeah,
Um, and yeah, the GM has to do some structural stuff, but you've got stuff to do too, guys. Like it's
totally.
your job to
Yeah.
collaborative work.
Well, and that, yeah, exactly. I think that is a really good way of putting it. That, it is a collaborative thing that we're doing at the table, and so it's everybody has a job to do to some extent. Everybody has, or at least everybody has work to do. Everybody has a little bit of like work to do
Right.
to add to that collaboration.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've definitely GM'd for a group of people before who, like, it was a whole table of people who felt like their job was kind of just to show up, and that took a toll on me. Not just for in the usual GM ways, but also I'm an extrovert and I feed off other people's energy. So like, it made it especially difficult at that table for me to keep up the kind of energy that I needed. And as you might have guessed, that game didn't last very long because people lost interest. I lost interest. It was just kind of a huge disaster. But
Yeah.
yeah, and that tends to be the case really with anything, even not non TTRPG things. Like if there's ever some sort of like collaborative thing that is happening, if all the work falls on one person, that will probably not last very long. So
Yeah. I'm also an advocate for DMs outsourcing. You
yes,
have players who can
yes,
help you make decisions. So tonight's session of Maples and Dragons, I wasn't there the last session, but the DM and I have decided what has happened while I have been gone. And I now have a bunch of information about what happened to my character. We're not going to play it out on stream. We don't need to
yeah,
because I know what's
Mhm.
happened and we can just keep the plot rolling. It is one of my I do not like that my character has accidentally ended up having to have these spotlights of like, what did you do while you were gone?
right,
I'd rather make those natural and be like, I got back and then it's like, cool, what the hell? These are the things that happened to me. I don't have to have that play out.
right,
But it means that he can outsource to me what my decisions would be in that moment. He doesn't just have to be like, here's what happened to you. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
It's, hey, what do you think would happen? Oh, I think this would have happened. Great. Here's some information for you. Do with that what you will. I'm like, great. I can run with that. No worries. Easy does. And that stuff, I think, really, your DMs, don't be afraid to talk to your players between sessions about what they want to happen to their characters coming up. Ask them questions if you don't know. Like, that's what they're there for.
So I'm glad you said that, because this made me think of, hi odds, welcome. I think it's really interesting because a common, probably the most common piece of advice that is given to GMs is talk to your players. It is 90% of the time the answer to most of your problems. But what I think is interesting, that I think our assumptions, at least mine were, I don't know if this is true of everyone, but I know mine were until very recently. Assumptions about that are like, talk to your players about issues that are like inherently going to be player issues, right? At the table, not necessarily inter-party or whatever, but anything that's going to like potentially be an issue for them or whatever. But there's, I think, this unspoken sort of thing that makes it feel like if it's a GM issue, that's a GM issue to solve, and I don't think that's true. I think I did for a while have that assumption. In fact, until very recently, but literally as recently as just a couple weeks ago in our home game, I came there having spent the days really thinking about like an issue that I was having as a GM that felt like a GM issue, and I wasn't even going to bring it up to my players. It just so happened the conversation happened to go that way, and I was like, sure. And I cannot tell you how helpful that conversation was and how glad I was that I brought it up. Even though it wasn't like a player facing issue, it's still like they have perspective that I don't have, right? And so that's always going to be helpful, no matter what the situation is. It's always going to be helpful to have outside perspective. So it's, and if you want to be pedantic, the reality of it is that there is no such thing as an issue that only affects either the players or the GM. So, but
that's what I was gonna say. Yeah. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's fully collaborative the whole way through. That's the point. Yes, the GM will set stuff up in collaboration with who you've created as a character, or with the module that they're running, or like there's collaboration going on there. It is your job as a player to help with that as much as it is to help with being involved in the moment and doing the thing.
Yeah. And it's so funny because like having that realization, like it's so obvious now looking back on it, but like I was also very frustrated when I had that realization, because I've for a long time been very against the perspective that the DM is an island, and yet I found myself falling into it anyway, like so like
it's hard when some of the models of who DMs are in like pop culture are very, the DM is the island. Though. Like I think that is a thing that people can naturally do, because when you have Matt Mercers and Brennan Lee Mulligans and these people who clearly world build for weeks, who don't do it in isolation.
They sure
by
don't.
the way, they may look like they do publicly. They do not do that in isolation.
That's why I really appreciate like on like Dimension 20 how open they are about the fact that they have a writer's room.
Right.
Which is why we've always been very open about the fact that we have a writer's room for our actual plays and stuff like that. Because I think the public-facing perception that a GM creates in isolation is, I think, overall damaging to TTRPGs as a whole.
Yeah, I think it's such a. I'm glad that there are some people who I know who GM who do some of their world building and so on stream on purpose to break down the idea that like they are just doing this by themselves in their bedroom at 2:00 in the morning. Like, no, they're not. They are outsourcing it. They have random encounter tables. They have stuff that is impacting it, and they're not doing it by themselves. They're just not.
Yeah.
Not at the level that you are looking for.
No, not at all.
When people are looking at those things.
And like while
so don't feel like you have to in your home game.
Yeah, and like while you're probably in your home game probably not going to have a writer's room, right? But what you are going to have, and this is what I try to do, have a like constant conversation with your players outside of the game, you know, saying like, okay, so what are you thinking about this? You know, what are you thinking about your character in this, and back and forth. And I am lucky enough that I have a table of people who will volunteer that information and without me asking most of the time, which gives me so much stuff to go on. It gives me so much stuff to plan around it to go on because like my players are telling me this is what I'm thinking is happening with my character, and that's awesome.
Yeah.
But,
I think you're absolutely right. It is high time for a greater diversity of role models, plus more peeking behind the curtains of how things are developed over time. Yep.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yep, in lots of respects. Character creation, DM stuff, all of it. Because nothing's done by yourself. Not really.
Yeah.
And if it is, probably shouldn't be.
Yeah. I also, before, because we're kind of right at the end of our time here, but I want to make sure I acknowledge what Shadowmane said here, because I think that was a really good point. From another point of view, I used to play, but for the past decade, I've been a prominent GM by choice. I play rarely, but now I find when I do, I'm a much worse player than years ago when I used to play a lot. So there's definitely skills that players can improve, as there's some that I've lost. Totally. And this is kind of what I was going back to what I was saying earlier, how there's a constant ebb and flow in terms of, like, what things you're going to be good at in TTRPGs, because it really does depend on what you've been focusing on, you know. And so there's going to be times where you're going to be better at some things and worse at others, and then sometimes those things may flip, you know. It really just depends on your focus, how much attention you sort of pay. But I think the important thing is being aware of that fact. That's the important thing, because I think you're never going to escape that. You know, it's always you can't focus on everything. So there's naturally going to be some things that are going to sort of, some skills are going to be left behind. So it really is just, I think the most important thing you can do is just to like be aware of that constant dynamic, shifting dynamic within your own skill set, because that's then what's going to let you kind of check on yourself and go, okay, what things am I not doing that I would like to be doing, you know, and then gives you something to focus on. So, yeah. Yeah, we are at the end of our time, which comes fast, and it shocks me every time. But, so yeah, Kate, thanks so much for joining. Looking forward to having you for the next few weeks. And yeah.
I think it's gonna be fun. It'll be fun.
It
But
is.
clearly, we can't stop talking about random things, so I'm sure many a ramble will happen. So
Right, absolutely. Oh, just wait till we have our first what we've taken to calling our free range rambles, where there's no topic set at the beginning and we just kind of go. That's a chaos I'm looking forward to.
Chaos is a ladder.
Yes. That's very true.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. And we will be back. Are we coming back next? I've already lost track of my own schedule.
Yes, I think.
Yeah,
so.
I believe we're coming back next. We'll be back next Friday at 6 p.m. Pacific time. Thank you all so much for showing up, and we'll see you for the next Ramblemancy. But if not, we'll see you the next time you decide to come roll with us. Good night and good zone, everybody.